Hey everyone! This week I actually didn't have time to go to my normal brow lady, so I just decided why not get them waxed while I'm getting my nails done. It can't be that big of a deal. I fill them in anyway, and it really shouldn't make that big of a difference. And to be honest, I made a huge mistake because I went to somebody who I've never gone to before, and I feel like she butchered my brows. Like, I know that they're just sisters, not twins, and that they're never gonna look identical, but I'm so picky and I just should have never gone to somebody new. I feel like she made them really thin, they're slightly patchy, and they're just not what I want them to be. And so after I had my major meltdown, I decided I can actually get over this, and then I decided that maybe there's some of you out there that have gone through the same experience, and I wanted to show you how I can fill my brows in and make them look the way I want them to look despite the actual shape and if it's been ruined or not. Anyone can totally paint on a new brow. You can patch over the whole thing with concealer, completely cover it with like a liquid liner or a ton of eyeshadow or even a pencil, but I actually want to show you how to make it still look like hair. You can use concealer, you can use a ton of different like textures and products if you want, but if it doesn't look like hair, you're not fooling anyone, and honestly that just looks terrible. So I want to walk you through the steps on how to achieve a natural looking brow. So before I get started, I grabbed just Urban Decay Primer Potion in Eden, which has a slight color to it. It's actually like a really soft cream, and I just blend a tiny amount out on my ring finger and then generously apply it on the eyelid. I actually cover the brow hair as well, and I go underneath the eye because we're going to most likely apply eyeshadow or some type of product there. Primer is really important when you're doing your brows. You need to provide the skin with something to grab onto as well as the product. I also go down the center of the eyebrow just because we do tend to put concealer there, and I don't want that to start to bleed onto the brows later. Now I grab a MAC 269 brush, which looks just like this. It's definitely a lot wider than the typical 266 that some people use to fill their brows in. And I like this because even though I use this brush and do short strokes on the brow, I like the amount of coverage that it does provide. I have to use less product. I mean, it just really cuts the brow time in half. And I'm gonna grab the dark brown eyeshadow from this Maybelline palette. I recommend doing a very dark brown color, never black and never shimmery for the brow. I picked up very little product because you're filling in your brows and you want it to look like hair, and I just applied it at just that angled part of the brush, and I'm gonna go in and I start right at the peak of my brow. Wherever you put your brush down is actually going to be where most of the product is going to be distributed. And as you can see, I just start to do short flicks because that makes the strokes look more like hair whenever you apply your brow, and go into the tail. Wherever your eye shape ends, you want to really just make the brow from that upward angle. So I want my brow to come to about this point, and mine are a little short because, as I mentioned, she basically went over them with a lawnmower, and pull it out. So now we've got that under part done. I'm going to proceed to the top of the brow and start to build the shape on top. I'm going to lay my brush on the side and go right about a quarter in and pull back. As you can notice, I hold my brush towards the back. If you hold your brush towards the back, you apply light pressure. If you hold it up right against the base, you're gonna apply more pressure and probably get harsher lines and definitely a really dense brow, and you don't want that. Remember, you want it to look like hair. Now for this front part of the brow, it's really important that you go really slow and you take your time. This is what sets people apart from people that actually know how to fill their brows in and people who want to look like they know how they fill their brows in. It looks terrible if it's really dense and heavy right here. This needs to look as light and airy as possible so that it actually looks like hair. When you look at normal sets of brows, it always gets thinner right here. So if this part is really thick, it's gonna look like you just went over your entire eyebrow with a crayon. I always tilt my head back to see exactly what line I want to create, and just take a little product and line my brush really flat and then start to brush backwards really lightly. Now, as you can see, we're starting to create almost like a boxy square shape right here. I always just take my ring finger and lightly flick some of that product off. It really softens the front and makes it just look more like natural progression with your brow. I'm going to go in and fill in this little spacey area near the top. If you notice how I hold my brush, I always hold it on the side. Helps me create lines and dimension without looking harsh. When I start to go towards the tail, I lay it more flat, right on that angle. As you can see already, there's a huge difference in both brows. This still looks like hair, but it's so much more full. I am such a fan of thick brows. I think they just look more natural and pretty. I just use one color. I think an everyday brow doesn't need a ton of product. It doesn't need 2 different eyeshadows, a concealer, and a primer. I think it just needs one product and you're out the door. Now, this part that I'm going to show you is optional. You can take MAC Studio Finish Concealer and dip your brush into the product and clean up the underbrow area. That's frowned upon in a lot of different makeup avenues. Some people are really strongly against it and some people don't leave the house without doing it. It's totally up to you, but if you're gonna do it, I'm gonna show you exactly how to make it look like you didn't just create a highlight around your brow. I took a tiny bit of concealer on the tip of the brush and I start right at the center and I just lightly flick back. Now my trick is to not get right next to that brow line. When you get right up against the brown, you start to smudge the lines you just created. If you hold your brush a little bit underneath it and then brush back, you're cleaning up the area, you're definitely highlighting and illuminating it, but it's in a really, really natural way. It doesn't look like you just carved your brows out. And I always just take my ring finger and lightly blend it out onto the rest of my lid. Concealer makes a great primer for eyeshadow and any makeup look you're creating. You just don't want it to look like you actually put that down on your eye first. Concealer is also a really great way to clean up the top if you feel like that got a little bit out of control. Again, don't line it up against the brow, line it a little bit away, and then just lightly drag it around the brow, and then blend out with your ring finger. So I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. As you can see, I've got my completed look. I've got a really intense smoky eye, some lashes, and I just finished off with the foundation, some contouring, and a little blush. But I grabbed the Grow Luscious mascara because I am kind of really obsessed with this mascara right now. Recently, have rekindled my feelings for it. I grab the brush and I just lightly stroke it through the brow, and this is just to hold the hair in place. And I don't actually cover the entire brow, I just cover that middle section. And there you have it, it's my completed brow look. This is what I do before I ever even step foot outside the house. No matter what is going on, I have to have my brows on. And now you can actually recover from a situation where if you feel like somebody totally butchered your brows, you can just fill them in using a little eyeshadow, the right brush, and a tiny bit of primer, and if you need to, concealer. Thanks for watching.